Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 22 of What If Naruto Was the Red X. If you guys enjoyed this what if, and want to see part 23 of it, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead, and check out other what ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Jump City. Naruto placed a hand up on the top of the doorway as he looked outside of the chopper to the chaos below, with a frown across his lips. As if my town wasn't hectic enough on its own, now I've got to deal with giant fucking plants too. Naruto inwardly grumbled while Otacon twisted and turned past skyscrapers and lashing vines. Snake. We've got incoming up ahead. Otacon exclaimed, and the old soldier grunted while moving over to the door and cursed as he looked out to see another massive Venus flytrap-like giant plant. Shit, just what we didn't need. The man grumbled, before checking his stinger, and then aimed it for the plant. Everyone brace yourself. He warned, and Naruto and Batgirl did so quickly, while the old soldier fired his weapon, a missile flying forward, before blasting the head off of it as they flew over it. Moving back inside, Snake quickly reloaded his stinger while Batgirl looked at him incredulously. Who has a missile launcher in the police department? She demanded, and Snake grunted while taking a peek out of the chopper, then brought his head back inside. Like I told that kid Cyborg, some of us have to take Cinderblock and other metahumans down the hard way. Snake grumbled, and Batgirl just looked at him in shock, while Naruto made his way back to the door and looked outside. The blonde then grimaced as he saw a mess of vines below them, squirming and wrapping around one another, as if they were snakes poised to strike. Man, something tells me Ivy's seriously pissed. Naruto mutters while Snake looks outside and rolls his eyes. Yeah, killing her babies will do that. Batgirl offered with a look, and Snake scoffed while taking a cig from his belt and placed it between his lips. Alright, you called Snake, you wear an old bandana, carry giant guns with you, and you even smoke too. What are you supposed to be, some kind of one-up soldier badass or something? Batgirl questioned of Snake with a frown, and the man grunted while Otacon grinned. He's no one-up, Snake is the real deal. The pilot stated while keeping his eyes forward, and Batgirl blinked. Wait, he really is a soldier? She asked, and Snake grunted. Formerly currently retired. Snake grumbled out while turning back out to look at what was coming their way. What outfit were you with? Batgirl asked, and Snake turned to her with a flat look across his face. I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. He stated seriously, and Otacon snickered, while Batgirl looked at the man incredulously. You're joking, right? She asked warily, and yet Snake merely remained silent, worrying the girl greatly as he turned back to the task at hand. Batgirl, let's worry about Snake's past when it actually matters. We have more pressing things to deal with at the moment, like, oh I don't know, rescuing Pinky before Beast Boy turns into something really dangerous. Naruto states flatly, and Batgirl raises a brow towards the boy. What can he turn into that's really that dangerous? I mean, I know he can become any animal living or extinct, but compared to most villains or heroes, he's not really all that dangerous. Batgirl notes, and Naruto sighs, genuinely wondering if it was better or worse to have a world filled with metahumans. They seem to have moved so far forward that they'd forgotten the dangers of such basic creatures. Batgirl, I know that most villains and heroes have super strength, speed, endurance, and whatnot. But Beast Boy is truly something deadly in his current state of mind. Naruto stated ominously, and Batgirl looked to the blonde former nin warily. How so? She questioned, and Naruto turned to gaze at her impassively, white masked eyes gazing into her bright blues. Beast Boy can be the thing man feared before superpowers became so common. Tigers, bears, and lions, the most deadly of predators, are his to command. He can become perfect killing machines if he wants to be. Nothing is more dangerous than a beast when you have it cornered. Even if Pinky manages to find Beast Boy, she'll likely have to contend with all manner of beasts, the least of which would be from our age. And then you have to worry about beasts from ages past, extinct creatures like dinosaurs. And Pinky is still normal, in case you haven't forgotten. Naruto explained, then reminded with a flat tone, and Batgirl shivered slightly while Snake narrowed his eyes. The green bean may not have much in the way of tact, skill, grace, or even any kind of discipline in him. But his powers do make him a formidable, if not deadly opponent when he's like he is now. Snake said sagely, and Batgirl sighed before looking over to Otacon with a strange expression. Think you can hurry it up, Otacon? She questioned, and the man looked to his gauges before quickly nodding his head. Hang on tight everyone, I'm giving her all she's got. Otacon said quickly as the chopper sped over the multitude of plants below them, and towards Beast Boy's location. Raven appeared at the docks of Jump City, and then grimaced when she saw that several vines wrapping around one of the warehouses. Doesn't take a genius to guess where Robin is. She muttered to herself while shaking her head, then teleported into the warehouse. Within she finds the building slowly buckling under the force of the vines, and then spots Robin, now on the ground, and straining to free himself from the ropes around his arms and legs. Damn it. What the hell did they use for ropes? He demanded angrily, and Raven shook her head and walked over to the boy wonder calmly. Looks like you could use a hand. She quipped, and then blinks in surprise when she realizes what she just did. I've really been hanging around Naruto too much, eh? Whatever. She thinks to herself for a moment, then shrugs the thought off while Robin looks at her and grinned widely. Raven. Thank God you're alright. Are Barb and Starfire okay too? He asks quickly, and the Dark Titan rolls her eyes while holding a hand towards him. Both fine. Beast Boy and Cyborg, not so much. That girl called some friends to get an antidote for Ivy's mind control from Batman. Raven explains while black energy forms over her hand before suddenly breaking the ropes around Robin's wrists and upper body with her powers. The boy wondered, then quickly untying his legs and stood up. That's good. What about the rest of the city? He asks while rubbing his wrists, and Raven grimaced for a moment. Raven, how bad is it? He asks her seriously, and Raven looks to the ceiling while evading his masked eyes entirely. That girl said that, and I'm quoting her on this, it looks like Gotham on a bad day. End quote. Raven replies, and Robin grimaces visibly, before bracing himself as the warehouse shakes. Now then, may I ask why you're only wearing your mask, vest, shirt, and pants? Raven questions with a raised brow, and Robin twitches, before clearing his throat and crossing his arms over his chest. Harley and Ivy are so used to the gadget users in Gotham that they eliminated the threat of any of my hidden gadgets by taking everything I had that I could have reached or hidden something in. Robin replies with a bitter tone, and Raven blinks, then shakes her head with an amused smirk. Right? Guess your tricks are starting to get a little too predictable then. She quips once more and blinks yet again, swearing she's starting to talk like Naruto, which makes her shiver slightly. Maybe I do spend too much time with him. But then again, there are worse fates than talking like him. Raven mused to herself while Robin looked at her strangely for a moment. You're really hanging around your boyfriend way too much, Raven. You're actually starting to talk like him now. Robin notes with a look at the girl, and Raven merely shrugged her shoulders before both heroes braced themselves as the building shuddered once more. Where are your things? We really need to get out of here before those plants break in here and start tearing into us. Raven questions, then states urgently, and Robin frowned in thought before shaking his head. No, Raven, I think you're right about me becoming too predictable. If Harley and Ivy figured out my style so easily, it's only a matter of time before the villains around here do as well. Robin states, then walks over to the girl, Raven having a brow raised in his direction. Take me to the tower. I have something there I'm going to need. I think it's finally time for me to spread my wings and fly on my own. Robin muses, and Raven looks at him strangely before nodding her head, then pulled the shadows in around them and teleported them both to Titan's tower. Elsewhere, Starfire flew through the air while looking down towards the ground for Cyborg around the Jump City prison. Please, where are you, my friend? She wondered while looking to the oddly shaped device she had on her belt. It looked something like a high-tech syringe, complete with a needle. However, instead of a plunger, it had a button for it to rapidly inject the target, was made of titanium, and there was very little glass on it, the little bit she could see being shatterproof and tempered. Clearly this Batman wasn't taking any chances with his toys. Ignoring that, Starfire finally spotted her half-mechanical friend, and smiled brightly, while coming down near him. Seeing him looking at the prison with a vacant expression, Starfire looked at the syringe at her waist, before taking a breath and walking towards Cyborg. Please, friend Cyborg, are you yourself? Starfire questions, then yelps as Cyborg turns towards her, aiming his sonic cannon at her. Now she can see that his one normal eye is glowing a sinister green color, much like those of Ivy. Go away, the mistress don't want you here. Cyborg states in a dead monotone, and Starfire looks at him with obvious hurt before taking a breath and standing her ground. Please, friend Cyborg, I truly do not wish to do you any harm. Starfire starts, but Cyborg merely continues to aim his cannon at her, causing the alien princess to sigh for a moment. But, if you insist on aiding the poison of Ivy, I will be forced to. Starfire states with her normally chipper eyes glowing a bright green, and locking onto the half-metal teen as well, starbolts forming in her hands. In response to her declaration, Cyborg quickly fired his sonic cannon at the alien princess. Growling, Starfire flew over the attack and lunged at Cyborg, rearing a fist back. She slammed it into his face. I must remember to make the apology to friend Cyborg when is in the right of mind later. Starfire thought before Cyborg grabbed her by her head, turned on one heel and sent her flying. Spinning in the air, Starfire soon managed to right herself, and then shook her head to get her bearings straight. Looking down towards Cyborg, the alien princess yelled and evaded sonic cannon fire as it came flying at her. Perhaps it is better that neither of us do the apologizing. Starfire suddenly notes before concentrating, and then sent a beam of energy at Cyborg from her eyes. The beam connected with the titanium titan and sent him flying back, skidding across the ground for a moment before impacting with the side of the prison. Oh my, I did not wish to hit him that hard. Starfire notes before shaking her head. She needed to focus at the moment, not worry about her friend when she was the one fighting him. Moving back and then launching towards Cyborg, Starfire hoped he could forgive her for ramming him into the ground. However, before she could, one of Cyborg's fists nailed her, and sent her flying back, before rolling along the ground. Reaching up to rub her jaw, Starfire then slowly got up to her feet, and balked when she saw Cyborg rushing towards her with surprising speed. Cyborg then gave a battle cry as he reared an arm back and slammed it forward, Starfire flipping over him at the last second and landing behind him in a low crouch. Izal, he's really trying to do me the bodily harm. Starfire says in shock, before looking to the metallic syringe on her belt. I need to get hold of him, if only for a second, so that I may help him. She nods quietly, then powers up her starbolts as Cyborg turns his eyes towards her. But, in order to do that, I must first wear him down. Starfire says to herself as she floats into the air, eyes glowing brightly. Meanwhile, Kitten could say her day was worse than it had been earlier. Getting to Beast Boy had been the easy part. It was actually fighting him that had proven itself to be the real challenge. From what she could gather, Cinderblock, Overload, and Plasmus had taken off as soon as they were free. It was undoubted that the Titans would have to deal with them, though when she really didn't know nor care. All she did know was that Beast Boy was a much more dangerous opponent than she would have given him credit for, hence her problems thus far. Cursing under her breath, the girl quickly flipped over a green tiger and landed in a low crouch behind it. You're so lucky I like you, beastie. I don't normally take this kind of shit from guys. Kitten thinks to herself as the snarling tiger turns around to face her, fangs and claws bared, before it suddenly roared and lunged forward. Narrowing her eyes, Kitten evaded the first swipe of the tiger's claws, then twisted into a kick, slamming her foot into the tiger's face. However, it only moved slightly to the side, giving Kitten only just enough time to evade its next attack. So those Lara Croft games are right about not being able to hit a big cat like that. She muttered to herself lowly, then pulled a few shuriken from her belt. Beast Boy snarled towards her as she did, fangs bore as he lunged forward once more, swinging his razor-sharp claws at her. Smirking slightly, Kitten flipped back, and then threw her shuriken at the green-furred titan, her weapon slamming into his head and leaving several deep cuts, while making him back up a ways. However, before she could do anything, Beast Boy suddenly changed shapes, now in the form of a rhino. Oh, you have got to be shitting me. Kitten states with a gaping jaw, seeing as a rhino has very tough skin, her syringe wasn't going to work on this sucker, so even if she managed to get on his back, she wouldn't be able to do anything to him. Cursing a second later, Kitten ducked out of the way of the Beast Boy rhino, as he slammed into a wall behind her. Pulling his head from the rubble, Beast Boy turned towards Kitten once more and lunged forward, horn directed towards the pinkhead. Growling, Kitten jumped up and then ran along the beast's back before flipping off of it and landing behind it in a low crouch. Quickly turning back to it, she saw Beast Boy skid to a hull before shape-shifting once more, now in the shape of a bull. Oh great, as if that were any better. She mutters to herself bitterly, glad she wasn't Red X right now, thought pink was a shade of red. Shaking her head of that thought, Kitten considered getting onto Beast Boy's back and trying the syringe now. However, this beast would be harder to hang on to, especially with how wild he was at the moment. Looking at her mind-controlled boyfriend for a moment, she grimaced to herself inwardly. If I drop the syringe, it could take me a bit to find it, and with his ability to change into fast deadly creatures on a dime, that could turn out fatal for me. No. I need to wait for him to turn into something where I can actually use the syringe on him without worry about dropping it or him retaliating. Kitten muses to herself as Beast Boy drags one of his hooves along the ground, puffing out his breath through his snout. Inwardly grimacing, Kitten crouched back, ready for anything, or at least hoping she was. Seconds afterwards, Kitten watched as Beast Boy came towards her with a loud cry, horns aimed for her. Narrowing her eyes, the pink cat waited for the right moment, and then flipped back onto the wall behind her, then flipped off the wall and over the green bull. As she did, Beast Boy slammed into the wall, now stuck in it with parts of the wall covering his neck. Grinning, Kitten quickly jumped onto his back and made to reach for the syringe, however Beast Boy suddenly changed and threw her from his back. Landing with a grunt, Kitten turned, then cursed as a green gorilla brought his fists down onto the ground where she had been less a moment ago. Roaring and beating on his chest, Beast Boy quickly rushed Kitten once more, swinging his massive fists at the girl. Grunting and dancing around the beast's fists, Kitten twisted into a kick to its head, then flipped away as it bared its fangs at her. Roaring in outrage, Beast Boy jumped into the air, and then brought both fists down on her. Cursing and jumping back at the same time, the gorilla missed Kitten by a hair's breadth, while both his fists slammed into the ground. The ground around them shuddered as he did so, and Kitten deftly twisted on one heel, in order to keep her footing as she came back to the ground. Panting, Kitten made a mental note to work out more while narrowing her masked white eyes onto the green gorilla. Why did I have to choose Beastie? Why not Cyborg? At least he's still partly reasonable. Besides, I don't want to hurt Beastie too bad, not to mention the fact those stupid pheromones of Ivy's have driven him completely crazy. Kitten inwardly complains while watching as the gorilla came at her once more. Sighing inwardly, Kitten lunged forward into a flying kick to Beast Boy's face, knocking him off balance, where she then flipped backwards off of his face. Landing in a crouch as Beast Boy hit the ground once more, Kitten felt proud of her small achievement for a moment, only for her eyes to widen in fear, as Beast Boy changed once more, this time into the shape of a dinosaur. However, looking at the new form Kitten, was unable to tell what species it was, only that it had a line of quill-like knobs down the back of its head and neck, two very sharp-looking talons on its hind feet, a long thin shout that gave the impression of a velociraptor, but it had a somewhat too short a tail for that species, and green scales with dark green stripes down its back. That sort of looks like a velociraptor from Jurassic Park 3, but those things were so inaccurate to a real velociraptor it's not even funny. I wonder why Beastie looks like one. Kitten notes then wonders silently while blinking towards the beast, shaking her head of those thoughts a moment later. She looks at the beast warily when it hisses towards her, back arched and body posture to attack. Roaring out, Beast Boy suddenly lunged forward at Kitten, the girl quickly ducking under to avoid its razor-sharp talons. Rolling to her feet behind it, Kitten grunted when its tail slammed into her, knocking her to the side. Groaning in pain, she then looked up, and saw it was crouching low now, its sharp teeth bared before it ran at her once more. Rolling onto her feet, Kitten cried out as it lashed out at her with a quick kick, her left arm now sporting a long gash from its razor-sharp talon. Rolling out of the way as Beast Boy suddenly lashed out at her with his snapping jaws, Kitten panted out while looking at the beast. Oh shit, why did I have to get the one who literally has killer instincts? Kitten had to wonder before reminding herself she chose Beastie cause she liked him. Shaking her head at that, Kitten grimaced when the creature hissed towards her once more, and then came lunging at her again. Rolling back as he bit forward, Kitten then kicked the side of the dino's muzzle before jumping onto his back. Yelping as he then started to buck and jump around, Kitten grabbed the quills on its head to steady herself. Hissing, the raptor-like creature then rolled over, Kitten quickly jumping off of him, before grunting as its tail lashed out, knocking her off her feet. Giving a loud coughing-like call, the beast then shrieked, while lunging at her, and Kitten rolled out of the way as its right foot came at her, claw ready to tear into her. Rolling into a crouch as the thing gave an odd snarling sound towards her, Kitten quickly considered the ways it could kill her, and slowly started to back up. He had to turn into one of the most infamous and outright deadly creatures from the Jurassic Park series, didn't he? She muttered under her breath before screaming as the beast lunged at her once more. Thinking quickly, the pincat flipped back onto the side of a wall, and Beast Boy slammed into his head into it. Breathing a sigh of relief, Kitten hopped down to the ground, hopeful that he was back to normal, only to call out when his left leg lashed out and cut her right hip. Looking at it with wide eyes, she saw its green eyes were open and narrowed on her dangerously, an evil hiss echoing from its throat as it got back to his feet. Tartarus HQ. Everyone down. Jinx shouted as the rest of the team evaded several lashing and twining vines. The group had been waiting for some kind of message from Naruto, only for the proximity alarm to go off. When the group got outside, they had been shocked to learn that Ivy's plants had not only made it past the city limits, but also seemed to be making their way further across the landscape. What the hell is going on here? I thought Ivy said they wouldn't get this far. Jinx demanded, and Gizmo grunted while hiding behind some rubble and fiddling with a portable keypad on his left arm. Shit, looks like the mighty plant Avenger miscalculated the reach of her control on these things. Gizmo exclaimed and then moved his arms over his head as the plants around them began to spasm once more. But what new hell is this? Donnie wondered with a light groan, while now in ghost form and floating in the air, beams of green energy formed in her hands. In response to the question, several of the vines started to change further, splitting into roughly a dozen smaller vines before suddenly sprouting large colorful blossoms with sharp-looking black barbs at the center. Okay, what the hell is that? Jinx asked while Gizmo's eyes whitened. Oh no, some rare jungle plants are capable of firing small barbs laced with poison when threatened, and I think the vines can too now. The tiny terror exclaimed as his explanation before one of the many barbed plants fired at them. Those who could quickly ducked out of the way, while Donnie went intangible, and Kid Wicket vanished into his cloak, before reappearing with Jinx and the others, Dwayla flipping and twisting around the numerous barbs, before landing with them as well. Once they had the barbs started to slam into the boulder they were stationed behind, the rest slamming into the walls of their HQ. That's fucking great. Now what did you mean Ivy miscalculated, Giz? Maybe she's just pissed off about Temp attacking her. Jinx questioned then offered while covering her head as several barbs went over their heads. No, she'd normally keep the plants inside the city limits. This lessens the chances for them to do any damage to the current ecosystem outside since she's still an eco-freak. However, from the looks of things, she miscalculated her ability to control the plants for such a massive area. Add in the fact the plants are rapidly mutating and now even adapting, and I'm guessing they're starting to develop a pseudo-intellect. Basically, she's lost control of these things and they're just starting to run wild, destroying anything in their damn path that they perceive as a threat. Gizmo explained, and Jinx then looked out from behind their hiding spot and widened her eyes. Aw shit. Everyone move. She ordered, and the others quickly did as told when one of the large thorny vines suddenly slammed down where they had been. Now what do you mean they have a pseudo-intellect, Giz? They're nothing but fucking plants, remember? Jinx demanded then exclaimed, and Gizmo grunted while using his portable to calculate something. What I mean, you damn shit liquor, is that the fucking plants are no longer completely under Ivy's control. Her telepathy isn't advanced enough to control an entire city's worth of plants at one time. What she's done is created a massive force of plants and is only actively controlling smaller sections of it. The rest of the plants are linking to the others like a hive mind. Thus, as Ivy continues to control only a few sections of the plants, they start to adapt their own will with her goals in mind. Gizmo explained, and Jinx slapped the back of the tiny terror's head. In English, Gizmo, she exclaimed, and the boy growled before pinching the bridge of his nose. Put simply, the plants are basically taking Ivy's goals and will and taking them as their own. Since they are constantly mutating, they must have developed something similar to a hive mind. Thus, every plant in the entire city is linked to one another. While this would normally help Ivy, it looks like she's unable to assert her will over so many at the same time. The will of the hive is so strong that they're doing whatever they damn well please at this point. Gizmo explained with a deep scowl, and Jinx's eyes widened while looking all around. You mean to tell me these plants want to do all this damage? She demanded, and Gizmo rubbed his eyes. Sort of. The plants themselves would probably have no goals, however add in the mutagens and Ivy's blood, and I'd say they have a few basic instincts. 1. Sustenance. 2. Survival. 3. Reproduction. These are the basic instincts of all life, even Ivy herself. Now then, seeing as the plants are constantly mutating, I'd have to guess that they perceive something in the city as a major threat, and are constantly evolving to try and get rid of the problem. As far as sustenance goes, there's more than likely a reason they're spreading out like they are. Gizmo explained, and Jinx frowned while watching as Blackfire and Donnie started firing their beams at the plant once more. We can't keep up this pointless running and dodging for much longer, Jinx. We could really use a plan here. Donnie noted while firing several ghost rays at the barbed shooting plants, causing them to start arching as if in pain. I'm with her. Unfortunately, our powers are of very little use against these damn things. Blackfire stated before firing her ice beams and cutting down a vine, only for a Venus flytrap-like plant to rise up where it had been. Oh by Zol, I swear I'm killing anyone who tries to give me flowers after this over. Blackfire muttered to herself, with Jinx, Donnie, and even Whale agreeing with the alien teen. Yo, this isn't the fucking time to be making plans for the future. We need a way to take these fucking plants down right now. If they continue to spread like this, the fucking city will be the least of our problems. The entire planet will be in for one very bad day, if they manage to grow to a sufficient source of food. Gizmo reminds the other members of Tartarus with a deep scowl, and Jinx grits her teeth while throwing several hex bolts at the plants, causing a few to spontaneously combust. Well, I've got nothing here, so what exactly did you have in mind, Shrimpy? Jinx demanded before cursing as she flipped away from a vine, and then was surprised as a blade came out of nowhere and sliced the vine in half. Blinking, the pink cat turned to find Willa grinning with a familiar umbrella in her hands. However, the handle of the umbrella had been ejected, a small circular blade present in the top of it, while a short sword-like blade escaped from the very tip of the umbrella. A strong-looking chain binding both pieces together. These plants are real hassle. Too bad we don't have any weed killer to get rid of them. Dwilla said sarcastically, before laughing and flipping back, away from a vine which she then threw the upper part of her umbrella at, and pulled herself over to it. Grinning madly, the girl then whooped as she rode the vine, waving an imaginary hat in the air while hanging onto the chain. Ugh, could that girl be any more random? Jinx demanded while Giz was silent, typing on his portable before suddenly grinning widely. Random as hell and completely batshit crazy, but damn, I could kiss the bitch right now. Gizmo exclaimed, much to Jinx and Mammoth's confusion. How is that any different to what you'd normally do? Mammoth questioned seriously, seeing as Dwayla was anything but ugly and Gizmo would probably have no reservations about ever kissing her. Because now I have a reason to. Dwayla said she wished we had some weed killer, right? Gizmo questioned, and Jinx and Mammoth both nodded, while the others continued to fight with the vines and plants attacking them. Well, think about it, if I can manage to whip up some kind of plant killer just for these suckers, we could be rid of the plants, and if we play our cards right and spread it over the city. Temp won't be completely pissed off about you girls leaving his girlfriend to the mercy of two depraved psychos and attack us all. Gizmo replied, then reminded with a look at the pin cat, and Jinx shuddered before blinking. Hell, if she gave you all that from just one sentence, then I could kiss the crazy bitch. Jinx muttered and then heard a laugh and turned to see Dwayla pull something out of her backpack before jabbing her hand down into the vine. It instantly started to rock and shake wildly, slamming even into the other plants around it, while she flipped off of it to stand in front of Jinx and the others. What did you do to it? Mammoth questioned, and Dwayla held up her right hand, showing what appeared to be a black glove with several claw rings with syringes attached to them on each finger, leaving her thumb bare. Tubes leading from the syringes to a manacle around her wrist with 3 tubes holding an odd glowing yellow solution within each of them. Fear toxin from Uncle Scarecrow. I never leave Gotham without it. Dwayla replied with a wide grin, and Jinx looked at her warily as she leaned her sword umbrella into her left shoulder. You carry fear toxin around with you as well? Jinx asked meekly, and Dwayla shrugged her shoulders before suddenly kicking Jinx out of the way while rolling backwards into a low crouch. Hey, what the? Jinx started to say, only for Mammoth to turn her head and see where she'd only just missed being impaled by one of the sharp barbs from the plants. Oh, thanks. She mumbled and Wayla flipped onto her feet while looking back over to the plants with a frown. I was afraid of that. Looks like my fear toxin only lasted a few seconds before they built up an immunity. Ivy's immunity to poisons and toxins must have been transferred to them, though the new batch at least lasted for a few seconds. It'll be the same for any weed killer we develop, so we'll have to hit them all at once. She mumbled to herself, sounding oddly sane to the other members of Tartarus, before she suddenly giggled crazily and placed her fear toxin back into her backpack. Oh well, back to work. This weed needs a whacking. Quill exclaimed before lunging back into the fray with her umbrella, and Jinx blinked. Okay, I'm confused. Is she really insane or is she just messing with us by pretending she is? Jinx asked seriously, and Mammoth sighed while shrugging his shoulders with a flat look. That is one of the great mysteries of life. He mumbled while rubbing his face, and Gizmo growled in his throat. Would you shit lickers stop talking about Will? I need someone to guard the lab and me, while I try to whip up that weed killer. And oddly enough she's right about us needing to hit the entire city all at once, if we want it to work. Gizmo suddenly shouted and Jinx shook her head, to snap herself into a better set of mind. Right now she didn't have Tempest to take control, she had to be the leader for the time being, and that meant she needed to keep focus. Right then, Kid Wicked, I want you Private and Billy to head inside with Giz. The rest of us are far more effective against the plants than any of you guys anyways. Jinx ordered and the said three nodded their heads while rushing back into their HQ with Gizmo, while Mammoth grabbed Jinx and ducked behind a boulder when another couple of the barb plants started to fire at them. Don't those things ever stop? Mammoth wondered seriously, and saw Blackfire as she flew into the fray roaring out, and firing her eye beams into the many plants, tearing several apart and smirking, only to gape in shock when they easily reformed, and then lashed out, lunging at her. Shit. Now they're starting to regenerate too. Donnie exclaimed with white eyes hidden by the black lenses of her domino mask. Got to think something, got to think. Donnie said to herself before yelping and turning intangible when one of the vines reached out for her. Erg. Damn it. With all of you. Donnie growled out while flying around a hail of fire from the barbed plants, turning upwards into the air. Donnie then held her hands at her sides, before slamming them together, and firing a powerful beam down onto them, destroying the plants for a moment. Motherfucking plants just. She gritted out with a twitching eye as she threw beam after beam into the plants to destroy them, only for them to start to grow back soon after. Leave me the hell alone. She roared out as fire suddenly burst from her body in a massive circular wave of ivory flames, and then quickly spread outwards like a raging inferno. Seeing the flames, Blackfire cursed while quickly grabbing Dwayla and pulling her to Mammoth and Jinx, as the Pincat grabbed Seymour from his spot. Ducking down, the teens felt as the flames passed over them, while they also burned their way through the plants, leaving only ash in their wake. Slowly, once they heard the flames start to die down, Blackfire lifted her head up, mostly due to being nigh invulnerable with her powers, but also because she was the only one willing to do so. What she saw was something slightly disturbing. Donnie was on the ground panting, and her ponytail was now seemingly made of arching white flames, while more of the ivory-colored flames also slightly covered her hands and feet. And more of the ivory flames spiraled up from her feet in wispy waves around her body. Whoa, maybe we should start calling her White Fire instead of Ray. Mammoth muttered while looking on with Blackfire, and the alien princess twitched. More like Halion, are sometimes called the Burning Princess and Goddess of Death on my homeworld. Blackfire murmured with no small amount of fear in her tone, while Jinx and Seymour looked around at the damage with white eyes. Wow, how much power is she packing in that hot little body of hers anyway? Seymour demanded and got looks from the others. What? He questioned, only for the others to turn back to the panting Donnie, as she looked around for a moment. Whoa, that was so cool. She stated with a grin beneath her face mask. How'd I do that? She then asked eagerly, while looking at her hands with wonder as the white flames started to dim, then disappear completely, while the other's face folded. You've got to be shitting me. Jinx exclaimed before shaking her head. No, never mind, at least she bought us some time with that last bit, but I just hope it was enough. Jinx stated while reaching a hand up to rub her forehead, and Mammoth squinted before grimacing. I don't think so. He mumbled, and Dwayla sat up and looked around quizzically. Why's that? She wondered aloud, and Mammoth pointed to the distance, squinting. Dwayla suddenly groaned when more plants could be seen heading their way. That's why. Mammoth stated, and Jinx groaned, before looking to Donnie as she started rubbing her hands together, and then throws them forward in some awkward attempt to restart the flames from before. Donnie, think you can start another blaze like the last one? Jinx questioned, and Donnie looked at her, then the advancing plants. Not really. Unfortunately, like with my biodad, any of my newer powers will kind of sporadically activate at first. Donnie replies to the older teen nervously, and Jinx sighed, while shaking her head. I was afraid you were going to say something like that. She murmured softly, before looking back to the others, and then to the plants heading their way. Alright team, it's do or die time, so get ready. We absolutely cannot let these damn plants get through to Gizmo. Jinx stated, and Donnie and Blackfire formed their energy into their hands. Mammoth crouched down, Seymour switched to laser vision, and Jinx herself called her hex energy into her hands. Back was Starfire. Starfire yelped as she was slammed into by Cyborg, then grunted as she skidded along the ground before flipping into the air and shook her head. Looking to see Cyborg lunging at her with a roar, the girl flew over her and then shot down and rammed into the titanium teen and rammed him into a wall. Quickly backing up and flying back into the air, Starfire formed a starbolt with both hands, before throwing the larger-than-normal blast at the Titan boy, slamming him further into the wall. "Please all, may he be tired enough for me to finish this now?" The girl pleaded softly, then groaned as Cyborg showed his normal stubborn attitude as he rose out of the rubble and then brushed a chip off his shoulder. Sighing, the princess got ready to attack the titanium teen once more, only to gasp as Cyborg was knocked off his feet by a red and yellow blur that then skidded to a halt with a smirk beneath her. "Hey Starbabe, nice to see you again, need a hand with Metal Man over there?" Kid Flash questioned with a smirk, and Starfire blinked for a moment before smiling brightly towards the boy. "Your assistance would be much appreciated, new friend," she replied, and a grin spread over KF's lips before he suddenly moved like lightning, knocking Cyborg off his feet once more and then yawning behind him. "Come on big guy, you've gotta be faster than that if you want to win this fight." KF taunted and Cyborg growled while kicking out at the teen, only for him to quickly sidestep him and then moved over to lean into a wall. "Too slow," he mused, and Cyborg growled while getting back to his feet and then fired his sonic cannon at KF, the hyper-fast boy then popping up behind him while leaning over his shoulder. "Did you get me?" he asked humorously, and Cyborg growled while trying to punch KF, then started to fire at the teen as he ran away from him. "Hold still, you little," he stated to say, only for Starfire to come from behind and grab him from under his shoulders. "Excuse me friend Cyborg, but I am ending this battle now," Starfire stated, and then kicked off into the air before suddenly stopping. Turning herself and Cyborg back down towards the ground and spinning, Starfire let go of her titanium teammate a split second before he slammed into the ground with a crash, KF grimacing as the alien princess, and he then walked over towards him as he groaned. "Well, he probably won't put up much of a fight now," KF mused, while rubbing the underside of his nose, and Starfire nodded in agreement while jumping down into the hole and quickly pulled the syringe from her belt. "Please forgive me for this friend Cyborg, I know of your fear of the needles, but in this case I believe that it is most necessary," Starfire then said, while using the odd syringe on the human side of the titanium titan's neck, watching as he stiffened and then groaned before passing out completely. "Well, that's one down, 1 to more titan, 2 hot villains, and a bunch of vegetables to go," KF mused, and Starfire nodded her head, then lifted Cyborg from the ditch and pulled one of his arms over her shoulders. "Need some help there?" KF questioned, and Starfire smiled kindly before shaking her head. "I am no longer in need of the assistance, new friend," Starfire stated, and walked over to lean Cyborg against a wall and then looked at the broken wall of the prison with a frown. "However, that I believe we must close up soon, or we shall never be returning the prisoners to their rightful places within the prison of holding." Starfire mused aloud, and KF smirked slightly in response. "Right then, let's get to work, princess," he stated while rushing off, collecting numerous individual bricks and started to place them down, Starfire flying to larger pieces of the wall and placing them down herself before using her eye beams to meld them together. "With Naruto. Snake, do you think we could hurry this crate along? I'm getting a little worried about Pinky," Naruto questions then states while looking to the old soldier, and Snake turns to his pilot. "You heard him, Otaken, would move this thing already." Snake grumbles, and Otaken lets out an annoyed groan sigh. "Sorry, but this isn't a military chopper, Snake, it can only go so fast," Otaken reminds while Snake grunts and looks to Naruto, the blonde nodding his head slowly before turning back to the carnage outside. Looking out of the door and down to the ground below, Batgirl has a worried frown cross her features while seeing the numerous vines, poisons, and pods that cover the city below them. "I sure hope the city has enough to cover all these damages," Batgirl muses, and Naruto nods his head in agreement with her. "We do, thanks to Turf," Snake offers while looking out as well, and Batgirl turns to him with a raised brow. "Titan Urban Reconstruction Fund Turf," Snake responds, and Batgirl plainly gapes at the man before shaking her head. "I bet half the league wishes we had something like that," Batgirl muses mostly to herself, and Naruto nodded his head before narrowing his eyes. "Shit. Snake, we got more incoming plants," Naruto shouted, and the said man cursed while quickly raising his stinger. Firing, the man watched as he took out one of the plants, only to gape as it slowly started to regenerate. "Oh hell," he grumbled, and Naruto and Batgirl both grimaced. "Agreed, now they're starting to regenerate, tearing him apart all this time must have triggered some kind of evolutionary response," Naruto mumbled, and Batgirl nodded her head in agreement with the sword-carrying thief. "Oh well, looks like I'll have to deal with them the hard way. Or in other words, the fun way," Naruto noted before jumping out of the chopper, then hit his teleportation button, appearing in the air above the vines and other numerous plants. Cursing as several barb plants suddenly sprouted on a nearby building, the blonde thief rolled in midair to evade them, and then unsheathed both swords. Come on. Show me what you got. Naruto called out while swinging both swords, sending arcs of wind into the plants to cut them down to size. However, he then grunted as they started to grow back, thus sheathed one sword and held one hand at his side. He had two options as a Venus flytrap rose up out of the ground and lunged at him: create a Type A Sen Shuriken or Type B. Type B was a new Rasen Shuriken he developed in the hive. This was because he'd always hated not being able to throw his Rasen Shuriken when he wasn't in Sage or Kyuubi mode. The attack was identical to the Rasengan in creation, save that he had also added 4 spiraling blades of wind to the outside of it that swirled inwards, to keep the attack stable over a distance. When thrown, the spiraling blades on the outside were all that lost power, not the Rasengan on the inside. Also, when holding it, Naruto had to keep his palm flat, and upon throwing it, it curved slightly. This was the version he'd been using for the last few plants, since it was a long-range version, and he'd wanted to keep away from them. He'd actually meant to give it a new name like Spiral Swirling Shuriken or something like it, though he wasn't exactly sure about that name. Shaking his head, Naruto decided to screw it, and formed the set technique into his left hand, allowing the spinning blades that made it to spin faster and faster. Narrowing his eyes, he pushed more and more power into the attack, and it began to spin faster. Bearing his arm back, he then threw the attack at the plant, and watched as it ripped through and destroyed the stalk of the massive plant. "Heh, now that's what I like to call pay dirt," Naruto said before teleporting forward, and then swinging his ninjutsu in the air, slicing the next few vines into pieces, before teleporting once more. Forming another of his Type B Rasen Shuriken into his hand, and then sheathing his ninjutsu to form a second one, the blonde threw both of them towards the ground, where they tore through the street, and formed massive spiral craters, taking out all the plants in their paths as well. Grinning despite himself, Naruto then flipped up in the air, and gave a mock salute to the decimated portion of the city as he teleported to the chopper, and took hold of the outer portion of the door, before pulling himself back inside. "Are you completely insane?" that girl demanded while grabbing him by the front of his coat, and Naruto blinked for a moment. "Why do you ask?" he questioned, and the red head twitched while glaring at the teen with gritted teeth. "Because you just jumped out of a chopper going at full speed, decimated a portion of Jump City, to take out a couple dozens plants, and then jumped right back in like it was the easiest thing in the world," she exclaimed, and Naruto reached up to take a thoughtful look, that girl sighing and releasing the teen as he does. "On second thought, I don't want to know," she mumbled to herself, and Naruto chuckled lightly, while looking to Snake, who just shook his head. Moving up to the front of the chopper, Naruto then spotted the prison they normally kept the Turnian trio, and narrowed his eyes. "There?" he finally says upon seeing Kitten running from the dinosaur Beast Boy had become. "You weren't kidding about Beast Boy being dangerous," that girl said lowly before Naruto quickly wrapped an arm around her waist, and teleported them over to Kitten. Back in the chopper, Snake looked over to Otacon, and his partner nodded his head, while heading for a place to land. As Naruto and Batgirl landed, Kitten jumped and hid behind Naruto, panting laboredly while looking towards the green dinosaur that had been chasing her with white eyes. The Pincat then looked up at her male counterpart with a pleading expression, and Naruto raised a brow. The girl had numerous cuts and tears over her suit, one of her lenses was cracked, and to top it all off she was covered head to toe in dirt and grime. "Help," she said meekly, and Naruto rolled his eyes, while turning to Beast Boy's Dino form. "Batgirl, you and Pinky wait for an opportunity to give him the antidote. I still got a little steam to blow off, and Dino Breath seems like a prime candidate," Naruto says with a dark grin as he cracks his knuckles, Kitten nodding her head rapidly before pulling Batgirl away to hide behind one of the walls Beast Boy had knocked down. Cracking his neck as he looked at the VR beast Beast Boy had turned himself into, Naruto then cracked his fingers and crouched into his stance. "Alright then, Green Bean, let's finally see what you've got," Naruto called out, and Beast Boy screeched while lunging forward, snapping his jaws at Naruto, the thief quickly leaning back, and then twisting into a roundhouse kick. Watching the beast right itself in midair then tap its talons, Naruto clenched his fists, then narrowed his eyes. "Come on," he taunted, and the beast screeched once more, lunging forward and swinging its large tail at the thief. Catching the tail and grunting, as he had to pump chakra into his arms to do so, Naruto then turned and threw Beast Boy by his tail into a wall. "Is that all you got?" Naruto taunted, and Beast Boy hissed angrily while getting back up, then roared loudly while lunging for the blonde thief. Kicking out with a leg, Naruto easily evaded, before punching the beast in the snout. The hit was significantly stronger than Kitten's own as Beast Boy lost his balance, and fell onto his side. Naruto twisting into a turn, before ducking low and kicking Beast Boy to the side, where he slammed into another wall. "Don't want to be so rough with you, Green Bean, but you've seriously got to calm down," Naruto muttered lowly, only to blink as he heard a strange sound coming from the VR. Seconds later it changed shapes, now in the form of a massive green-colored Tyrannosaurus Rex. "Oh, you have got to be shitting me," Naruto mumbled before cursing as the T-Rex roared loudly, nearly knocking him off balance. Quickly lashing out, Beast Boy then turned on one foot, using its tail to attack, and Naruto cursed as he flipped over it, the tail slamming into the remaining bits of the wall, and knocking them all down completely. Grunting, Naruto jumped onto the tail, only for Beast Boy to flip him up into the air with it. Quickly attacking him, Beast Boy opened his mouth to try and eat the young thief. Cursing Dinos in his mind, Naruto caught Beast Boy's open jaws, and placed his feet and hands between the many razor-sharp teeth of the beast. Narrowing his eyes, Beast Boy applied more pressure only for Naruto to push himself out of his mouth. Roaring once more, Beast Boy used his nose to knock Naruto back up into the air. Alright, that's it, this ends now. Naruto exclaimed while forming two shadow clones at his sides, each quickly forming a Rasengan into both of his hands. Slamming his hands together, Naruto lunged back at the T-Rex and slammed the attack into its head. Adama Rasengan, he exclaimed as the attack forced the skull of the T-Rex down and into the ground, while Naruto was pushed back up into the air. Looking down at the T-Rex, Naruto was glad to see the beast was unconscious, but otherwise okay, with a skull as tough as diamond that isn't saying much. He inwardly notes before flipping in the air and landing in a low crouch on top of the T-Rex, as it slowly changed back to Beast Boy, both Kitten and Batgirl gaping at the thief. You took him down in 5 minutes when I've been fighting him little under an hour, and barely given him a scratch, Kitten demanded loudly, and Batgirl looked at the Pincat incredulously for a moment, and then shook her head in exasperation. Why does she agree to go with the thieves again? Let's administer the antidote before he wakes up. She mumbled while rubbing her face, and Kitten nodded before she quickly rushed over to her current bow, and used the syringe on him. Seeing him grimace slightly before taking a peaceful expression in his sleep, thus Kitten gave a relieved sigh. You owe me big for this shredded suit, beastie. She mumbled fondly, while Naruto crossed his arms and looked up to see Snake and Otacon circling them. Come on, let's go check up on Starfire and KF, they should have taken care of Cyborg by now. Naruto stated only to turn his head at a grinding sound, then cursed as a vine wrapped around part of a chopper. Shit. He stated as Snake and Otacon jumped out of the chopper while the vines tore it apart. Well, what now? Kitten questioned as Snake and Otacon landed, Snake hanging onto the back of Otacon's belt. Now we check up on them to make sure they're okay. Naruto replies while running over to Snake with Batgirl following him. Yo, you alright, Snake? Naruto questioned and the old soldier grunted while rubbing his head, Otacon groaning from his spot before throwing off his helmet. A few bumps and bruises, but none the worse for wear. The man replies while Otacon then reached into a pocket and pulled out a pair of cracked glasses. Speak for yourself, Snake, some of us aren't formerly soldiers. I was just a scientist who specialized in robotics and stealth enhancements before I met you. Otacon mumbled and Batgirl looked at the man with an impressed expression, before all of them felt the ground shudder and shake. Great, now what? Naruto gritted out while Kitten dragged Beast Boy over to them, the girl then grunting as she drops him to the ground. However, seemingly in response to Naruto's inquiry, several spore pods like they'd seen before started to pop up before them, some of them started to shake. Why do they always have to mutate at the worst possible moments? Kitten wondered aloud and Batgirl sighed. Probably just bad luck. She stated and Naruto ignored her while narrowing his eyes on the pods, as one suddenly opened up and shot out several poison spores. We need to take out those plants and quick. Naruto stated and Batgirl nodded her head in agreement. Pinky, you Snake and Otacon take Beast Boy and find cover while me and Bat Babe deal with the spores. Naruto ordered and Kitten nodded her head, Snake crouching down and scooping up Beast Boy before turning and jumping behind one of the overturned walls. Alright, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto exclaimed, and a dozen clones popped into existence around him. Alright boys, move out and deal with the spore plants, something tells me the shaking ones are going to turn into something really nasty. Naruto ordered and the clones quickly ran off, and did as ordered, while the spores continued to shake, and spasm for a moment before suddenly growing. As the clones started destroying the pods, the ground suddenly rumbled as a massive Venus flytrap burst from the ground, snapping its jaws around several of Naruto's clones. Aw shit, it's another one of those damn things. Naruto complained while backing up with Batgirl as the Venus flytrap watched them unflinchingly, the pods around it all shaking and shuddering in preparation to mutate. What next? They've got giant thorn vines, Venus flytraps, spore pods, poison gas, and barb shooting plants all over the city. What else could they possibly start turning into? Batgirl demanded seriously and Naruto backed up for a moment, as one of the pods suddenly took on a drastic change in appearance. The pod not only grew, but then it started to glow an ominous green before suddenly bursting open. Out of it dropped an odd, almost skeletal creature made of what appeared to be wood with a flower on its back, a single vine leading towards the ground from the flower. How about that? He mumbled lowly, and Batgirl's eyes widened dramatically as they both took close stances. As they watched the figures fall out of the pods, they also watched as they started to shake, vines suddenly bursting from the flowers on their backs, and wrapping around their wooden forms, forming into a humanoid yet somehow still feminine body structure. Making them appear thicker before leaves sprouted, then started to cover them like pale green skin, long vines of hair, then falling from their heads to finish the oddly disturbing creatures off. Holy shit. Naruto whispered as the plant-like creatures all looked towards him with the exact same eyes as Ivy. Bat babe, what the hell is this? Naruto questioned in shock, while Batgirl gaped in awe towards the creatures. Ivy's blood is what allows her control of these things, and thanks to their constant mutations and adaptations, it looks like the plants are starting to turn themselves into copies of Ivy herself. Batgirl guessed while Naruto gritted his teeth and pulled his swords from his back. Great, a whole batch of dryads. Naruto muttered and Batgirl blinked, and then nodded her head, agreeing that the name seemed to suit the creatures. How can a bunch of fucking plants turn into something this complex? I mean, the rest of the mutations I can pretty much understand, but to be able to turn into a plant variation of human life. Naruto questioned while some of the dryads suddenly sprouted what appeared to be bark over their bodies like armor, large thorns growing out of portions of them as well, giving them a very fearsome look. Ivy has created intelligent plants in the shape of humans several times before. These are only different in that they appear very similar to Ivy's build and structure, more than likely that is a side effect of Ivy's blood being so concentrated into them. Batgirl replied while pulling the two saw bracers she'd used earlier and crouched into a stance apposing the many dryads. Wait, she's done this kind of shit before. That would have been really good information a while back, you know. Naruto demanded, then said angrily before turning back to the oncoming dryads, as they started to form the barbed shooters on their arms. These also seem to be adapting the larger plant variations into themselves. They're all just an amalgam of the other larger plants, only smaller. Batgirl whispered to herself while ignoring Naruto, the blonde grunting as he crouched down. Fine, ignore me, but I'm sick of standing around. Naruto growled out before lunging into the dryads, rolling and dodging several barbs from them, before twisting on his heel and swinging his swords, unleashing two massive blades of wind, to cut the dryads in half. Smirking, the blonde stood up, only to whiten his eyes, while the dryads started to regenerate lost limbs and armor. Oh shit, didn't see that coming. Naruto mumbled while Batgirl threw an explosive batarang at the dryads, the weapon exploding and knocking the front few back into their sisters. Growling and lunging forward once more, Naruto started to twist and turn, slicing through the dryads quickly before jumping into a spinning slash, cutting one in half before coming out of it, and slicing two more in two. Turning, Naruto grunted as they started to regenerate once more, the other dryads slowly walking towards him. Stupid plant babes need to learn how to stay down. Naruto thought to himself before twisting on his heel and slicing them in half, then flipped up and over a few barbs. Landing in a low crouch, Naruto twisted into a sweeping kick, knocking a dryad off her feet before stabbing the dryad through the head. Standing up and pulling his sword from the dryad, he cursed as it grabbed his leg. Kicking it off, he watched it slowly get back up, its wound healing instantly before several thin vines sprouted from its arms. Holding its arms towards the blonde, they shot out towards him in a massive wave. Cursing, Naruto held both of his swords before quickly spinning them both before himself, slicing and dicing the vines that got too close to him. Once the wave ended, Naruto held both swords out before twisting all around, sending a massive wave of wind blades all around, and slicing a vast majority of the dryads in half. Looking around as the dryads continued to regenerate, Naruto raised a brow when he suddenly noticed that the pieces of them not connected to the main body of the dryad started to wilt, then quickly die. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto wondered what the difference was, then grinned, the vine attaching to the flower on their backs. That must act as their roots, take that away and the dryads die. Ha, being a gardener finally comes in handy in a fight. Naruto thought to himself before lunging at the dryads once more, flipping and rolling out of the way of the ones that fired barbs at him. I've got your number now. Naruto whispered before flipping into the air and coming down behind a dryad, cutting the vine from her back as he did. Landing in a crouch, he turned and watched the dryad fall to his knees, then turn a beautiful red, then dull brown, before finally becoming black and withering away. Ha, nice way to die all things considered. Naruto mused before grinning as he turned to face the other dryads, said creatures quickly firing on him, only for him to vanish. Appearing above the dryads, Naruto swung his swords, slicing dozens of the vines connecting to the many dryads, and causing them to wilt and die as well. Seeing this, Batgirl got the idea and smirked while taking a gasmask from her belt and placing it over her lower face, lenses instantly snapping over her eyes as she lunged into the fray as well. Flipping over a dryad, she brought her saw bracer down on the vine, cutting it and causing the dryad to wilt, before throwing several batarangs at some nearby dryads, to cut their vines as well. I have to admit, Axe does have his moments of brilliance. Batgirl admitted while ducking and rolling out of the way as the dryads started to fire more barbs at her. Barbs at barb. Irony at its best. Batgirl mused while throwing several batarangs at the dryads to cut their vines. Smirking, the Dark Angel of Gotham lunged forward, pulling a few capsules from her belt, and tossing them at the dryads. The capsules instantly started to explode, freezing the dryads solid as she then slammed her fists through them, and then flipped to the next few without missing a beat. Elsewhere, Naruto flipped and jumped over dryads while slicing the vines from their backs. As the battlefield started to turn into a graveyard for dryads, those remaining quickly ducked underground, leaving Batgirl and Naruto alone with the giant flight trap. Well, this sucks. Once you figure out how to get rid of them, those dryads aren't such a nuisance. Naruto mumbled to himself, before cursing as two vines shot out of the ground, a pair of dryads riding on each of them. You were saying? That girl demanded, and Naruto merely grunted, before teleporting into the air. Falling down towards the dryads, Naruto cursed as the flight trap grabbed him in its jaws instead. Oh, I am so sick of this happening. Naruto shouted angrily, while holding its jaws up. That's it, no more Mr. Nice Red X. I'm fucking sick, and tired of you giant commie damn plants trying to turn me into plant food. It ends now. Naruto exclaimed while forming a 1000 blades jutsu around his body. Once he had, the flight trap was torn apart from the inside out, as Naruto briefly floated in the air as the air spun around him, and then spun in place while pushing chakra into his hands. Fusion. Maku Kitten. He exclaimed loudly while spinning even faster, forming a mini tornado and pulling the vines and dryads up into it, before forming a quick 1000 blades jutsu inside of the tornado as well. The effect was instantaneous. Everything unlucky enough to be trapped within the swirling tornado was torn apart piece by piece. Cursing, Batgirl fired a grapple to the ground as the tornado started to pull her in, Snake, Kitten, and Otacon holding on to Beast Boy, while also ducking behind a large piece of rubble, as the wind picked up the smaller pieces. Soon the wind finally died down, a now blazing red-eyed Naruto falling from the tornado as numerous vines, and a roar of fury from Ivy came forth. Narrowing his eyes, the former nin brought his swords back, before swinging them both forward, the force of the wind he created knocking the oncoming plants to the ground, while pushing him back up into the air. Unlocking thermal blasters from his gauntlets as soon as he was far enough in the air, Naruto aimed downwards and fired on the many vines, the blasts of pure red-hot heat, setting them ablaze. Writhing and lashing out in pain, the vines started to slam into the ground, Batgirl cursing as she ran away, and ducked behind the same rubble as Kitten and the others. How the hell is he doing all that? Batgirl finally demanded, and Kitten shrugged her shoulders, though also made a mental note to never get on his bad side. I don't know, and so long as he's on our side for the moment I don't really care. Snake replied, and Otacon nodded his head in agreement with the former soldier. Sighing, Batgirl then turned to look over the battle, as the vines continued to writhe in pain, Naruto above them. Sheathing one of his swords, Naruto held a hand to the side, blood red energy forming in his palm, and spinning into a bright red Rasen Shuriken. Rasen Shuriken. The blonde exclaimed as he reared back his arm and then threw the Rasen Shuriken towards the ground below. The Rasen Shuriken hit the ground, and tore every vine and plant below him apart. Pods, barb shooters, dryads, all were ripped to pieces as the attack seemed to spiral outwards, leaving nothing below him, but a large spiral target. Panting in midair for a bit, the blonde-haired ex-shinobi then began to fall towards the ground, only for his eyes to snap open mid-fall. Rolling to the side, Naruto watched as another couple vines started to rise out of the ground and growled angrily, eyes starting to burn an even fiercer crimson, as the Kyuubi's chakra slowly became visible. Stupid plants. Naruto said in a low growling voice, only for one green, and one red beam of light, to slice through the vines, Naruto blinking and then shaking his head to rid himself of the Kyuubi's influence. Turning his head, Naruto saw Starfire carrying Cyborg, Wonder Girl carrying Kid Flash, and Supergirl all heading their way. About damn time. Naruto mumbled to himself, before teleporting to the ground and falling to one knee, panting heavily. Whoa, must have really overdid it with all the jutsu that time. He mused to himself inwardly, while slowly rising back to his feet as the other teens landed nearby. Nice to see you're right, Tin Man, hate for you to be out of the game thanks to Ivy. Naruto offers the teen, and Cyborg looked at the thief pointedly for a moment. You know, if Rob were here he'd probably try and arrest you. Cyborg noted, and Naruto rolled his eyes. Kid has a bit of a one-track mind, huh? Naruto noted, and Cyborg nodded his head in agreement. Luckily for you I'm not Rob, and I'm still a little pissed at him for not warning us about Ivy's kisses, or her pheromones, so I don't mind that you're here, so long as you're trying to help us this time. Cyborg then said, and Naruto smirked while giving a light chuckle as Supergirl landed next to him. You're right, Tinhead, better than the kid at least, that's for sure. Naruto offered while Cyborg shrugged, and then looked around, and shook his head. Thanks X, but man, what the hell happened around here? Looks like a nuclear weapon was dropped on top of this place. Cyborg questioned then stated, and Naruto chuckled nervously while rubbing the back of his neck. He happened. Batgirl deadpanned as she walked over to them with Kitten, Snake, and Otacon, Snake carrying the still unconscious Beast Boy. In response to the accusation, Cyborg gave a look to Naruto, and he shrugged his shoulders. What? The plants were getting on my nerves. He replied simply, and Cyborg groaned while palming his face with a grimace. Man has enough power to level a city block and acts like it's nothing. He muttered while Batgirl and the others stopped nearby, Batgirl removing her saw bracers. You guys okay? Cyborg asked the redhead, and she looked at the wounded Kitten for a moment before replying. Save for Pink X we are. Red X here took on the bulk of the plants, and leveled at least a quarter of your city, while he was at it. And just so you know, it is a proven fact, that Beast Boy can literally sleep through a hurricane. That girl then said flatly, and Cyborg rolled his eyes and smirked in response. I've known that forever. He replied while looking to the unconscious teen. Whoa, what happened to you? Supergirl asked while flying over to Kitten as the girl held a large gash on her right bicep. This boy was tougher than he looked. She replied, and Supergirl grimaced before looking around. Where is that Raven girl from your team? She can heal people, right? She asked, and Cyborg nodded his head before looking to his left arm and hitting a button. Harry, can you head over here? Pink X is in need of medical attention, thanks to an out-of-control beast boy. Cyborg questioned, and Raven raised a single brow for a moment before frowning. Me and Robin will be over shortly. She replied, and the transmission was cut, while Snake dropped Beast Boy to the ground. Once he had Starfire rushed over to the green teen worriedly, then looked up at Snake with a frown. Did you have to drop friend Beast Boy, officer? Surely you could have let him down more gently. She questioned, and Snake grunted, while lighting a cig, and then blew a little smoke from the side of his mouth. Don't care, I'm sick of dragging his green ass around, and I really needed a smoke. Snake replied while taking a puff of his cig, Otacon sighing when he did so. Please excuse Snake, he's not really a people person. Otacon offered, and Snake scoffed while turning his back on the teens, Naruto rubbing his head through his helmet before looking to the side, as Raven finally appeared with a very familiar teen now dressed in black beside her. Hi. Raven offered flatly, and then looked around and widened her eyes when she saw Kitten. I'll skip any witty banter and just get to work, you can fill Robin in on the situation. Raven offered while walking over to Kitten, and Naruto looked to newly dressed Robin with a raised brow. The suit he was wearing was skin-tight and black with a large blue firebird on his chest, a grey utility belt cinched around his waist, metal-capped steel-soled boots like his old pair, a pair of grey forearm protectors with black gloves that had steel plates at the back of each hand, and a black and white V-shaped domino mask. Well kid, have you decided to join the dark side, or is all the black and blue just an attempt to escape the traffic light nickname? Naruto wondered aloud with a smirk, and Robin gave him a look in response. 1. What are you doing here? 2. I've decided I'm going by Nightwing now. 3. Shut up. Nightwing ordered, and Naruto mocked him for a moment, while Cyborg cracked his knuckles and walked over to his leader. Me and you need to have a serious talk about this need-to-know basis shit you've been using with the rest of us lately. Cyborg stated angrily, and Night blinked before grimacing towards him. Can it wait until after we've saved the city from Ivy? He pleaded, and Cyborg twitched, before breathing out a breath. For the time being, yeah, after this though, we are having that discussion, Rob. Cyborg stated simply, and Night flinched slightly before nodding his head. Now that Tin Man has had his say. Kid Flash started to say before zipping over to stand next to Nightwing with a smirk. How you doing, Dick? Long time no see. KF offered, and Naruto blinked at the name. Dick. Oh, the mileage I'm going to be getting off that one. Naruto thought to himself with a mental and oddly maniacal laugh, while Night looked at Kid Flash in surprise. Bart. What are you doing here? He wondered, and then felt someone place an arm over his shoulder and looked to the side to see Wonder Girl. Donna. Wow, you too. This is a surprise, a pleasant one for once, but still a surprise. Night noted, and Wonder Girl rolled her eyes. All we need is Garth here and the team would be back together again. She noted to herself, and Night smirked slightly. Actually, Garth is a member of Titans East, Donna. Night replied, and Cyborg looked between the two with confusion written over his face. You know each other? He asked with a blink, and Kid Flash grinned. Yeah, let's just say we're old friends. Kid Flash offered while Nightwing smirked and rolled his eyes behind his mask. I met them back when I still worked with Batman. Hell, that's back when I first met Willa. Night noted thoughtfully, and Wonder Girl shivered. Speaking of Willa, is she still as psychotic as I remember her? Wonder Girl asked her old friend flatly, and Night grunted. More so. He stated, and Wonder Girl looked to Kid Flash, who was staring off into space before grinning. Leave it to Willa to prove us wrong. He mused, and Cyborg tapped his head. How so? He asked pointedly, and Kid Flash wrapped his arms behind his head. Back when we fought her, we all swore she couldn't possibly be any more insane without turning out like the Joker. Looks like we were wrong though. Kid Flash offered, and Naruto looked at them, and then crossed his arms with a frown. You guys seem really relaxed considering we're in the middle of a city that's practically under Ivy's complete control. He noted flatly, and Night smirked towards the black-clad thief. What's the matter, X? Running out of steam? Night quipped, and Naruto gave him a flat look in response. Let's see you take down a T-Rex, fight your way through half a city's worth of mutant plants, kick the asses of a dozen bikers, beat the hell out of some random rocker in orange, save dozens of people numerous times, all in the same day, and in only a few hours before finally getting tired. Naruto stated flatly, and Night blinked, before looking to Batgirl for confirmation. See the damage around here? She stated, and Night looked around, then nodded. He did that. She then stated while pointing to Naruto, and Night looked at him with widened eyes. Alright, never mind. He muttered, and then looked over to where Raven was finishing healing Kitten. Raven, could you check up on Beast Boy when you're done? He asked, and the girl mutely nodded while working on the injured Pink Cat. Alright, now can anyone tell me what the situation is thus far, and before I forget, is anyone else around here that's normally not in Jump City? Knight asked while looking around, then spotted Supergirl, who gave a small wave to the teen. Kara, why am I not surprised that you're here? He wondered aloud, and Cyborg threw his arms up. You know every super teen in the world, or what? Cyborg asked seriously, and Naruto looked at him with a raised brow. Geez kid, how many teams were you on before the Titans? Naruto asked, and Knight cleared his throat while looking away from them both. Anyways, Donna, what can you tell me about the city thus far? Knight questioned while ignoring both older teens, and both looked to one another before sighing. You know, he ignores us like you used to ignore that creepy stalker ninja girl Cheshire Temp. Cyborg stated, and Naruto scoffed. Are you kidding, Stonehead? He started to say, only to stop a Cyborg smirk and give him a dirty look. Cheater. He muttered, and Cyborg merely grinned. After seeing that tornado trick, you could only be Tempest Man. Cyborg reminded while patting him on the back, and Naruto waved him off, then walked over to Beast Boy, Cyborg following while KF and Wonder Girl filled Robin in on the situation thus far. Is friend Beast Boy going to be okay? Starfire asked worriedly, and Kitten sighed, while Batgirl rolled her eyes. X might have been a tad too rough with him, but he should wake up soon enough. Batgirl offered, and Kitten nodded her head in agreement, Starfire sighing in relief, while Raven placed a hand to Beast Boy's head. He's just sleeping, she offered flatly, and Naruto snickered. But I could sleep through a hurricane, and did. Naruto noted, and Cyborg shook his head before leaning down. Watch and learn, he said before holding one of Beast Boy's ears, and took a deep breath. Wake up, Grass Stain. I'm making steak and eggs for breakfast. He then shouted, getting looks from those around him, only for Beast Boy to jump up and look all around before glaring at a grinning Cyborg. Dude, that is so not cool, Beast Boy stated angrily, while Kitten snickered and Naruto outright laughed. Now that Beast Boy's up, who else feels like a fifth wheel on the new team? Cyborg asked while nudging over to where Knight was talking to Wonder Girl and Kid Flash. Cyborg, chill, so Robin has old friends, it's not like you didn't before, either. Raven reminded, and Batgirl nodded her head in agreement with the statement. And let's not forget that you guys do have more members than they did. Batgirl reminds simply, and Beast Boy blinks. Dudes, what did I miss? He asks while looking around with obvious confusion, and Cyborg sighed. You don't want to know, Beast Boy, you really don't want to know. Cyborg replied while Supergirl floated above the ground with her legs crossed below her, causing Beast Boy to point and stare at the girl in shock. Supergirl, he exclaimed, and the blonde bombshell nodded while waving with one hand. Dude, we have Supergirl in town, Beast Boy said loudly, and Cyborg turned his friend's head to see Kid Flash and Wonder Girl as well. Dude, it's totally like a mini Justice League around here, Beast Boy says in shock, and Cyborg rolled his eyes, before patting Beast Boy on the head. Yeah, we know, Beast Boy, it's old news, he said simply while Naruto grunted and then held his hands in a T-shape. Yo. Time out, enough chit-chat, we still have the problem of Ivy and Harley to deal with in case you heroes have forgotten. Naruto reminds flatly, and Cyborg looked to the others who nodded their heads. Temp's right, and he was called the anti-Robin of the Hive, Cyborg stated, then mused with a smirk, and Naruto narrowed his eyes in response. Temp? Beast Boy questioned, and Cyborg nodded his head. Short for Tempest, as in that one Hive student I used to bunk with who was a ninja with control over wind. Cyborg replied, and Beast Boy made an O with his mouth, before gaping towards Naruto. You're the anti-Robin, he demanded in shock, and Batgirl snickered, thus making Naruto grunt, while crossing his arms. Not literally green bean, I was called that because I was a good team leader, used mostly weapons, but I was evil. Though, I was the one who blew up the Hive when you kids decided to invade. Naruto stated, then mused aloud, and Cyborg blinked. You did that? Wow, that must have been fun. Cyborg guessed and got a look from Naruto in response. More fun than I care to admit, but that's not the point. The point is we have a city that's covered from streets to sowers in plants and vines, a single person trying to control them. Naruto started to say, only to stop when he got a message from Gizmo, thus smirked when he finished reading it. And I do mean trying, since it looks like they're starting to run out of control, and Gizmo says he's working on a plant killer for these suckers as we speak. Naruto reminds, then offers, and Cyborg blinked in surprise. Wow, Gizmo actually comes through for us in the end, Cyborg said in shock, and Naruto snorted. No, he's saving his own hide. I'm still more than a little annoyed that my teammates helped Harley and Ivy when I explicitly said not to trash my city. Naruto grumbled out angrily, and Cyborg blinked, before rolling his eyes. You know, you really shouldn't trust women like them, Cyborg reminds, and Naruto grunted before looking over to Nightwing. Yo kid, my techie Gizmo says he's working on some plant killer for these things. Says he only needs some time to finish it off before he and the other members of Tartarus can spread it over the city. Naruto states, and Nightwing nodded his head with a thoughtful expression, while Wonder Girl gave him a look. The team is named Tartarus? She asked, and Naruto sighed. I heard that the Titans of Myth were all sealed in Tartarus. My team is basically made up of evil teens with powers, appeasing the Titans, thus, it just seemed to work. Naruto replied, and Wonder Girl decided she didn't want to know, while Robin nodded his head. Alright, listen up. Harley and Ivy are holed up in the Lex Corporation building in the center of town. We're going to have to split up for this to work. One team is going in through the buildings, while the other take a sewer entrance. This way at least one team can hopefully sneak up on Ivy. Pink X, you stay here with Officer Connors and his friend. You might be fine now, but you never know when they could use help. Knight stated, and Kitten nodded her head slowly, while Naruto rolled his eyes. Excellent plan you got there, kid, but might I ask who's going with whom? Naruto questioned pointedly, and Knight gave him a look. Since neither of us would work well, if we were on the same team we'll be on the opposing teams. Whoever wants to work with X can go with him. Knight offered, and Raven, Batgirl, Cyborg, and Supergirl stood with him. Right, then Donna, Beast Boy, Star, and Bart are with me. Knight said while looking around, and Naruto nodded his head. This team he could work with. Alright, then who's going which way? Naruto asked, and Knight frowned for a moment, before nodding his head. You have a greater number of land-based members. You'll head in through the sewers while me and the Flyers head in via the buildings and rooftops. Knight states, and Naruto looks over his team for a moment before nodding his head. Alright then, Titans, move out. Nightwing ordered as the two teams split off. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want a next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.